Hello everyone, my name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 4, Episode 1. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we made it. Mind War Season 4. In Season 4, we're going to be working through Dr. Monroe's second book, Far Journeys. Links to this book for free from archive.org can be found in the description of this video. We will also be working through Wave 3 Freedom and Wave 4 Adventure. So let's get started on Chapter 1 from Far Journeys. This Chapter 1 is titled Old Local Traffic. Dr. Monroe starts by telling us that he's been experiencing the out-of-body experience phenomenon for over 25 years. He's been working at this for quite some time. And he starts the book out this way. What is the out-of-body experience? For those who have not encountered the subject yet, an out-of-body experience is a condition where you find yourself outside of your physical body, fully conscious and able to perceive and act as if you were functioning physically, with several exceptions. You can move through space and time, slowly, or apparently somewhere beyond the speed of light. You can observe, participate in events, make willful decisions based upon what you perceive and do. You can move through physical matter such as walls, steel plates, concrete, earth, oceans, air, even atomic radiation without effort or effect. You can go into an adjoining room without bothering to open the door. You can visit a friend 3,000 miles away. You can explore the moon, the solar system, and the galaxy, if these interest you. Or you can enter other reality systems only dimly perceived and theorized by our time-space consciousness. So there, Dr. Monroe is again talking about the different levels of locations that we can visit, starting with our sleep dojo, where we learn all sorts of tools. That is where we spend most of our time in Focus 10. We can visit Locale 1, which is the here and now. That's where he's talking about being able to travel in your spirit body around the world. And then Locale 2, which is that dreamlike state where we are conscious and actively living through a dream. And then, of course, Locale 3, the abyss, that darkness far beyond our universe, where we can rest, recharge, and then visit any of the other locales from there. So to go on here, it says, it is not a new phenomenon. Recent surveys indicate some 25% of our population remembers having at least one such experience. That's interesting. Man's history is full of reports of such events. In early literature, it was commonly labeled astral projection. I began by refusing to use this term, as it had an occult connotation. That's right, folks. Occult means hidden. That's why I am the occult technician. I am trying to bring these teachings and these phenomenon to all of you and make them no longer hidden, no longer occult. We are in a way de-occulting these type of subjects. And it was certainly non-scientific by our standards. Charles Tart, one of Dr. Monroe's colleagues, a psychologist friend, popularized the term out-of-body experience. So again, that's so interesting. Out-of-body experience is a term that's very familiar to our culture and society today. And remember, it was Dr. Monroe and his team that developed that term. He says when they were looking for a new term in the 60s. In the past 20 years, it has become an accepted Western generic term for this particular state of being. Very interesting. To go on here, it says, the trail took me beyond conventional scientific circles. Okay, so through his work, he realized that just working with other scientists, he was going to have some limitations. So he had to go outside of science, and these are some of the folks that he worked with. The scientific circles, he honestly, in a lot of ways, here he says he found total rejection. Religions, he would often hear, it's the work of the devil. And of course, that's what we're going to hear by institutions and organizations that want to keep you in the dark, that want to keep these things hidden or occult from you, right? Instead of teaching you these tools and allowing you to apply them to your spiritual teachings, they're going to teach, or they're going to keep them hidden from you. They're going to call them evil. That's what people who are controlling do. Institutions, organizations, and corporations that want to control your mind, body, and spirit. They do that by keeping these type of teachings hidden. Parapsychologists say, well, that's interesting, but sorry, there's no data available. So again, from the scientific side, they said, hey, there's just not enough information there for us. And the Eastern disciplines, come study at our ashram in northern India for 10 years. And so anyone who, from the Eastern philosophies, who may actually support what Dr. Monroe was doing, would say things like, hey, that's really cool that you think you're onto something, but the real way to learn it is to come sit on the top of a mountain, and meditate and do yoga for the next 10 to 20 years, and then you'll really figure it out. Well, again, Dr. Monroe said that's not acceptable. That's not how this is going to work. That's not how we're going to be able to share these tools with the masses. We have to find a better way, a more scientific way that we can prove over and over again that this is working. This was chronicled in his previous books, Journeys Out of the Body, of course. Great book from season 1. Again, I'm so proud of you folks for making it through, season 3. Again, here in season 4, I'm so excited, folks. One thing is for certain, the purpose of the previous book was many times fulfilled. It brought thousands of letters from all parts of the world, and among them, many hundreds of people wrote their personal thanks for reassurance that they were not mentally deranged, were not so much alone after all with their closet secret experience that they could not explain, and most important, that they were not necessarily candidates for the psychiatric couch or mental hospital. That was the stated purpose of the original book, to help just one person avoid such needless incarceration. So, again, a lot of the work that Dr. Monroe does, we are carrying it on here. We are sharing this information with others, people who may have had an out-of-body experience, not because it was something that they went looking for consciously and in a volunteer state, but maybe through sickness or some type of injury or something, they had an out-of-body experience, or simply like Dr. Monroe did. They were just falling asleep for a nap one day and all of a sudden started floating out of the body. And Of course, that would be shocking for most people, especially people who are very logical. They don't like this type of thing. They don't like occultism and esotericism. They try to stay away from it, right? Maybe they think that that type of stuff is evil, but then they experience it in their own lives and they say, well, what do I do? And that's what we're doing here. We're saying to people like that, you have nothing to be afraid of, and you can actually harness the power. Or folks like us who volunteered for this. We are the adventurers. We are the explorers. We are part of the elite club, that small group of people throughout history who have actually harnessed the power of hypnotism, out-of-body experiences, and then astral projection. Let's see here. It says, in the spring of 1972, a decision was made that provided the answer. The limiting factor was my conscious mind. Okay, so Dr. Monroe here is saying that he had been doing all these experiments on his own with the out-of-body state and traveling through astral travel and astral projection. And I know that this might sound silly, but he actually kind of found himself starting to be bored because he was just doing the same thing over and over again. And oftentimes he would be doing this at night. So friends and family that he could visit and then verify that the visit was successful, they're all sleeping at the time. Or he's just traveling around the world where he doesn't quite know anyone and doesn't quite know what he's looking for, right? And so he said, one of the things that was limiting him in his out-of-body experience and through his astral traveling was his conscious mind. And so here's what he decided. He said, therefore, if the out-of-body experience decisions were left up to that part of me as they had been, I would remain just as I was, bored. I was too much in control, the left brain I, the id. What would happen if I turned this decision-making process over to my total self or my soul, who was purportedly conversant with such activities? So now he's saying that when he goes into the out-of-body experience, instead of going in with a plan, with a purpose, with multiple steps and saying, I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this and I'm consciously going to, instead he's saying, I'm going to get into the out-of-body experience through the steps that I've learned, again, using that scientific method of the, at each step that we take in our preparatory process, right? But then he says once he gets into the out-of-body experience, he then wants his soul to take over and guide him. And he says about this, believing this, I then put it into practice. The following night, I went to sleep, went through 2 sleep cycles, about 3 hours, woke up and remembered the decision. I detached from the physical and floated free. I said in my conscious mind that the decision to do is to be made by my entire self. After waiting for what seemed only a few seconds, there was a tremendous surge, a movement in energy in that familiar spatial blackness. And there began for me an entire new era in my out-of-body activities. Since that night, my non-physical experiences have been almost totally due to this procedure. So he turned over his conscious mind and turned it over to the soul and said, I want you to guide me as we go through this out-of-body experience. So let's see what he says here towards the end of this chapter. Okay, so he's talking here about different things that he started to notice as he was going through and listening to the tapes and having more out-of-body experiences. All sorts of things that most of us would, from the outside, look at as coincidence, right? Oh, that's just a coincidence that this happened or that happened, okay? And that's really, for me, personally, that's kind of what I've heard from people when I say, well, I listened to this tape and then this happened again in last season. I listened to tape 2-6, Living Body Map. I healed my body with the energy toolbar, aka our magic wand. And 3 days later, I received my medication to help heal my my chronic health issue, right? Some people would say that was a coincidence, but to me, it was so much more. It added a spiritual level to my healthcare, and it's been very comforting, and it really helps take my healthcare journey from, again, that sterile routine that just feels very institutional, and it's, again, that reminder of pain and sickness. But now it's more of a spiritual practice. I give thanks when I take my medicine because I understand that it is helping me heal and helping me stay healthy. And so Dr. Monroe gives several different instances, several different stories. I'll let you read through those. In one of them, the last one, he's talking about basically playing cards. He's playing cards with his friends. They meet up week after week and play cards. And one night, he said that basically he could literally see the cards. He knew exactly what they were before he even flipped them over. And over and over and over again, he displayed this that night. The cards would be in front of him. He would say, "These are the cards that we have. These are the cards you're going to deal me." And sure enough, they were there when he would flip them over. His friends were astonished. He was even astonished. And this is the best way to describe how this feels, okay? Again, people from the outside might think it's a coincidence, but for us, when we experience it, it is very simply a sureness. We are sure about what is going to happen and how it's going to happen. Because again, we are learning these tools. We are expanding our awareness and accepting the intuition that comes to us. We've talked about that before. It's one thing to have a gut feeling. It's another thing to act on it. And that's what we learn here as we work through the Gateway Experience tapes. We increase our intuition, we trust our gut feelings, and then we work on them. So folks, that was chapter 1, Old Local Traffic. Okay, chapter 2 is titled hemi-sync. Interesting. Let's see what Dr. Monroe has to say about hemi-sync. He said, the old truism held, necessity is the mother. It was through this need to help our subjects stay awake, get into a borderland sleep state, that we began to try utilizing sound. Okay, so again, this is very early on. Dr. Monroe is now starting to work with his colleagues on this, and now they're inviting volunteers to come in and actually start to get into this meditative state, get into focus 10 and beyond, right? And he said he realized that they needed some way to help people get into that borderland sleep state, focus 10. Your body is asleep, but your mind is wide awake. And so they started to experiment with sound, and here's what they did. That resulted in the discovery of frequency following response, FFR, which permitted us to hold the subject in a certain state of consciousness between wakefulness and sleep for extended periods of time. By introducing certain sound patterns in the subject's ear, we determined that there was a similar electrical response in the brain waves of the subject. By controlling that brain wave frequency, we were able to help the subject relax, keep him awake, or put him to sleep. One of our engineering participants suggested that we patent this unusual process, and we received a patent on the method and technique in 1975. He says here, he goes on to say, by cross-referencing the various effective frequencies among subjects, we slowly began to evolve combinations of sound frequencies which created FFRs, or frequency following responses, that were highly conducive with the out-of-body experience and other unusual stages of consciousness. Among these, of course, was a very effective means of moving into what is commonly known as a meditative state. All of this did not come quickly. Only a few words cover hundreds of hours of putting together different sound patterns and testing for responses, with subjects patiently lying in the booth as a sound warbled in their ears, slowly changing in pitch, while the technician in the control room looked for changes in the monitoring instruments. Okay. So, again, in those early days, they didn't have the Gateway Experience tapes created. This is the process that they went through to create the tapes. He talks about thousands of hours of the volunteers listening to all sorts of different sounds while their brain waves were being monitored, right? The little suction cups all over their head. They were monitoring their heartbeat and their blood pressure and their temperature, all of this at what would become the Monroe Institute. And one of the things that they were able to do is through this monitoring and through playing the different sounds and frequencies, is they were able to create patterns or models. And they would say, okay, we see that when a subject, one of our volunteers, is getting into this very deep, relaxed state, they're getting into what we now call focus 10. Specific areas of the brain are lighting up. And it's interesting because he talks about how they would monitor people who just fall asleep, where their body is deep asleep, but then their mind is unconscious, versus the focus 10. The body is deep asleep, but the mind is wide awake and conscious, and that there were different parts of the brain lighting up through the electrical signals. Again, they're reading all of this through the electrical signals flowing through the brain that they're monitoring with their devices, right? So again, they were able to create those patterns, and that's what helps us be able to recreate these things today. All of that time, all of that effort, we have to give thanks not only to Dr. Monroe and his team, but all the volunteers who sat through that hour after hour. I'm sure it was very exciting to be a part of it. So Dr. Monroe goes on here and he says, one of the first solid points of identification was the state that we began to label Focus 10. There was no particular significance to the number 10, and I'm not sure where it originated. Also, we wanted to be sure it was not confused with other forms of consciousness. Therefore, it became simply 10. We were able to identify this state very specifically and to return to it again and again with our subjects. Easily defined, Focus 10 is a state where the mind is awake and the body asleep. All the physiological responses are those of one in light or deep sleep. However, the brainwave patterns are different. The EEGs show a mix of waves ordinarily associated with sleep, light and deep, and overlaying beta signals of wakefulness. Again, they're able to create these patterns and realize that this combination of sound and frequency puts people into a focus 10. So we go on here, he says, our next step came as an interesting proposition. With the body asleep, the physical senses turned off or reduced, why not develop frequencies that would enhance perceiving by means other than the 5 physical senses? So we've talked about this before. When you're in focus 10 and beyond, you're no longer using your 5 physical senses to experience what is happening, because all of the things that you're going to experience are happening in your mind. You're not physically feeling things with your hand. You're not hearing things with your ear. You're not seeing things with your physical eyes. These are all happening in the mind, right? The mind's eye. With the insertions of high-frequency beta signals, our subjects began to find much more than the usual blackness. First came light and color patterns seen visually in the blacked-out booth with eyes either closed or open. Next came sounds heard in the head, not a part of the synthesized sounds, but voices, music, sometimes loud explosions that startled the subject completely out of focus 10, something that was still to be explained. So when I listened last night to Wave 3, Tape 2 is what I did last night, I, for the first time, kind of recognized that. Now, the enhancements of psilocybin were very powerful last night, and I noticed that I would hear things like music playing in the background, almost like classical music, things like laughter and things like that, that were beyond the sounds of the tapes. It was very interesting, and maybe it was because I read this, but maybe this was like a suggestion, but it was almost as if I was like, okay, start listening for those things, and sure enough, they appeared. What new development was the key that opened many things for us? We now call this the hemi-sync process. Science has long known that your brain is divided into two halves or hemispheres. But only in recent years has it been discovered that these two halves are entirely different in the function they perform. There is still controversy about the theory as to the details. Most of the time, we think with our left brain when we use our left brain. When we use our right brain, is primarily to support the actions of the left. Otherwise, we do our best to ignore it. In function, the nerve signals from these brain halves act in an X crossover. The left brain controls the right side of the body, and the right brain controls the left. We are primarily a right-handed civilization dominated by our left brains. We use the left brain to talk and read, to do mathematics, to reason deductively, to remember detail, to measure time, among other facets. The source of logical, rational thought. It knows nothing else. So the left brain is, again, that logical side of our brain that we use to function throughout our day, to complete our jobs, again, to do any type of thinking that would require mathematics or reading or writing, things like that. Our right brain is the originator of ideas, spatial sense, intuition, music, emotion, and probably much more than we now realize. It is timeless, apparently with a language all its own. So again, our right brain, we deal with emotions and intuition, the spatial sense, how we work in the 3D environment that we live in. And, things like music and creativity come from the right brain. So it would be interesting, I'm right-handed, again, probably a dominant left brain thinker. And one of the things I was thinking about working on is maybe trying to write with my left hand or make art with my left hand and see what results would come from that. If I can strengthen the conscious control of the right side of my brain, right? So basically, he says here, we are a half-brained society. Virtually everything we consider valuable is operated or controlled by our dominant left brain, even if it originates in the right brain, such as an idea or music. The left brain takes over and puts it to use. So one way to think about that is you might be having this burst of creativity if you're a musician and you're rocking and rolling and all of this music is coming out of you. You record all of it, and then the left brain takes over and says, okay, now we need to write this down on a piece of paper. We need to add symbols to it. We need to make it more of a mathematical equation. We need to record it, make it electronic. How can we then monetize it, right? All of those type of things happen in the left brain. So it says, how did we get this way? No one is absolutely sure, but one of the better guesses is that the left brain dominance came about because of a basic need to survive in the physical world. Through thousands of years, our forebears added to left brainism because that was the way to get things done. Our entire system, books, schools, colleges, and universities, industry, political structures, churches are fundamentally left-brained in learning, application, and operation. We have generally regarded right brain thinking as with amused tolerance, suspicion, disgust, irritation, distrust, and awe. I mean, that seems a lot like our culture today. Again, everything has to be calculated down to the millisecond now, to the half of a cent. Everything is monetized. Everything is structured. Even when they are playing with our emotions on the right side of our brain, from their vantage point, they want to know how far can we push the right brain in order to get more money, in order to get more of their time and attention, right? Everything is structured. And when people do think outside of that left brain paradigm and try to communicate through their right brain, again, they're often looked at with suspicion, disgust, irritation, distrust, and then sometimes awe, because we will break through. The right brain will break through and amazing things will occur, and even the most hardened left brain thinker will look at it with awe. So here's a quick sentence. It says, for example, the left brain remembers the name, but the right brain remembers the face. That's a perfect way to describe it, okay? When you meet someone new, the left brain is going to remember the name, the characters, right? The logical side of it. And then the right brain is going to remember the face. With me personally, I've never remembered a name. It's awful. Someone will say it to me and I will forget the name as soon as it comes out of their mouth, but I will never forget their face. Hemi-sync, short for hemispheric synchronization, uses patterns of sound to help create simultaneously an identical wave form in both brain hemispheres. This means that when your ear hears a certain type of sound signal, the brain tends to respond or resonate with similar electrical signals. Knowing the various electrical brain waves are indicators of states of consciousness, such as awake or sleep. You thus can listen to a similar sound pattern and it will help you in the desired state of awareness. So again, they're talking here about they were able to, as they would play certain sounds and frequencies, they would map the electrical signals that were flowing through the mind of the volunteers, and they were able to map out exactly what happens with each different sound. So it says here, hemi-sync takes the process an important step further. Each ear sends the dominant nerve signal to the opposite brain hemisphere following the X pattern. We hear a sound in our right ear and it is interpreted by the left side of our brain. Or we hear a sound in our left ear and it is processed by the right side of our brain. When separate sound pulses are sent to each ear using headphones to isolate one ear from the other, the halves of the brain must act in unison to hear a third signal, which is the difference between the two signals in each ear. For example, if you hear a sound measuring 100 in one ear and another signal of 125 in the other, the signal your whole brain will generate will be 25. It is never an actual sound, but it is an electronic signal or an electrical signal that only can be created by both brain hemispheres acting and working together. The signal so generated is narrow band in frequency and often twice the amplitude or strength of a typical EEG brainwave form. This is crucial to understand how hemi-sync works. We've talked about it before. The vibrato, that wave-like sound when you're listening to the tapes. That occurs because one tone is played in your right ear and a different tone is played in your left ear. Now, here's what is interesting. You can go on to YouTube right now and you can find all kinds of frequency videos. And you could just play one on your phone and you would hear that wave vibrato. Whoa, 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 right? You would hear it. You would hear it with both ears coming out of your phone. But that is a synthesized vibrato, a synthesized resonance, okay? It's being created artificially and then being played from the speaker. The difference here is that you actually have two different tones. So when you're listening to the Gateway Experience tapes and you start to hear that vibrato, that resonant wave sound, you could lift up one side of your headphones and you would hear the one tone over here. And then if you did the opposite, you would hear a different tone over here. It's not a synthesized wave sound. The wave is actually happening in your mind. That is a huge difference from, again, when you listen to these frequency healing tapes on YouTube, those are happening because it is synthesized. But with the Gateway Experience tapes, and I'm sure a million other types of meditations and stuff, right? Other meditation tapes, it's happening in our mind because the two different tones are being played. That's the power of this. That is like doing physical exercise in the brain. Your brain is weightlifting. It is exerting energy and it's creating new pathways that normally aren't there. And that's the beauty of hemi-sync. It says the use of hemi-sync in analysis apparently opens the patient to levels of memory that may take years to achieve using standard interview methods. So here he's talking about if you're sitting down with a therapist. If you just go into the therapist every week, just sober-minded, you're not listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, nothing like that, it could take years of work for them to extract memories from you. And probably the reason that is happening is because when you're awake and conscious and sober, you have all of your defenses up. You're trying to survive. The last thing you want to do is share your weaknesses with others. The last thing that you want to do is dive deep into memories that may have hurt you emotionally in the past. But with the hemi-sync tapes and through the Gateway Experience tapes, you get that sense of relaxation and comfort and safety, and you understand, okay, these are just memories. They're not going to hurt me. It's time to process them for what they truly are. And we do that with our energy conversion box. We do it in tape 1-4. Let's see here. He says, there has been much talk about the use of hemi-sync with terminal cases. So again, this is people who might find themselves to be very sick. However, in spite of the broad interest and numerous requests, very few have actually utilized the system with specific patients. One example of this took place with another psychiatric associate who was treating what might have been labeled a hardcore terminal case. So Dr. Monroe was working with another doctor who was treating a patient who was terminally ill, very sick. This patient was a psychologist as well, who had been ill for 2 years and had become drug addicted in order to handle the pain of his illness. So this patient, again, was also a doctor, so I'm sure he was very conscious about what was going on. He knew exactly what his terminal disease was, and I'm sure he was very aware that when he would take these pain medications that he was becoming addicted to them. The problem doubled up. The patient was supposed to know all the answers and would automatically resist all normal treatment with the added drug dependency. Our psychiatrist began working with him daily, utilizing the hemi-sync process. By the Wednesday of the second week, a simple but very significant event took place. The patient was able to go to sleep at night for the first time in 2 years without any pain or sleep medication. I have been saying this from the beginning of our adventures and exploration into the Gateway Experience tapes. For those of you who are living with chronic pain, this may be the very first time in years that you are able to think without being in physical pain. When the GABA-glycine, when that temporarily paralyzing chemical flows through your body that goes into our body when we sleep, when that begins to flow and our body goes into that deep sleep, but we are still wide awake, it is pain-free. And you can think and experience life and experience thought and work through your emotions. You can do that without physical pain. I know the exhaustion of physical pain. It drags you down into hell. You can't think. You can't focus. There is no other priority other than dealing with the pain. But we can work through that, and the tapes can help. At the end of the 2 weeks, the patient returned home. He died several months later, and the final report came from his wife. The psychologist patient had spent a very calm and quiet last week of his life, completely free of pain, without any medication, and had a pleasant and peaceful last few days with his family. Our psychiatrist who treated him believes that his exposure to the hemi-sync during treatment made this possible. What we're doing here is very important, folks. We can help others. We can help the people in our lives who are going through this, and everyone's going to go through it. Everyone's going to go through this type of pain at some point in their lives. Hopefully not, but it seems to be that way. That's what happens as we get older and things begin to deteriorate. And if we can help others just experience that ability to live without pain just for a little while, experience some peace and calm in their final days, I mean, what more could we ask for? This is why we do the work. For a good night's sleep, hemi-sync appears as effective as prescription drugs. Let me say that again. For those of you out there who are insomniacs and you can't sleep, again, you got to look throughout your day. What are you doing? Are you drinking energy drinks and too much coffee and all that stuff? Okay, that's going to be one part of it. But for those of you who kind of went past those things and you still have a hard time sleeping, let me read this again. For a good night's sleep, hemi-sync appears as effective as prescription drugs. Don't tell Big Pharma that. Don't send them this video. They're not going to appreciate it, okay? Again, I'm not trying to become a target of Big Pharma. I've already got enough enemies with creating the mind war here. Executives on long airline flights use it to overcome jet lag. That's interesting for you travelers. And others find it helpful in stress tension reduction or in playing a better game of golf. Again, for those professional athletes, you know they're out there using those visualization techniques. We've talked about it multiple times. It would be interesting to know if any of these professional athletes are using something like that. Are they using the Gateway Experience tapes or other forms of meditation where hemi-sync is used, right? As a learning tool, it has a great ability to focus and hold attention. In a particular course in a government training school, it increased mental motor skills by 75%. In another test, Morse code students improved their ability by as much as 30%. On the other end of the scale, Primary grade pupils in Tacoma learned in 4 weeks what ordinarily took a full semester. Again, for all of you students out there, young or in college and university, it doesn't matter. My suggestion to you, do your studying. You study for 2 or 3 hours, right? You're studying for the big test. As soon as you're done, listen to one of the Gateway Experience tapes. Maybe tape 1-6 where you go in and Dr. Monroe says, what is your purpose? Go explore your purpose in this tape. And what you're going to do is you're going to get in that focus 10, that body asleep, mind wide awake, and you're going to review everything that you just studied. You're going to see it over and over again. And the reason, again, we've talked about it before, whether it's you sit and watch a football game all day or you sit and play video games all day, when you close your mind, you see that video game being played over and over and over again. You see that football game being played over and over again. It's these visual processes in our mind, right? Our mind was taking in all these visual things, but when we close our eyes, we still see them. Those electrical signals are still happening. And if you are studying, that's what's going to happen. And this isn't anything new. People have always said, do your studying and then fall asleep, right? So don't do the studying and then get on your phone or, again, play video games or something else. Try to do your studying and then go right into listening to the tape. Try it for a semester and see if your grades improve. See if it's easier to remember things. See if you're more creative. Who knows? What do you have to lose? Half hour of your day? Stated simply, the Institute holds to the concept that number one, consciousness and the focusing thereof contain any and all solutions to the life processes that man desires or encounters. Everything that we want in life, any process that we desire or encounter, are held within our consciousness and the focusing of our consciousness. It is manifestation through imagination. Being consciously imagining ourselves completing a task, we will manifest that. Number two, greater understanding and appreciation of such consciousness can be achieved only through interdisciplinary approaches and coordination. You can't learn this stuff by being forced. You have to put in the work. Interdisciplinary. You have to be disciplined enough to listen to the tapes. You have to be serious enough to make sure that when you do listen to the tapes that you are in the right state of mind. You have to take the notes. If a tape didn't seem to work, you know what? You don't just go on to the next one. You wait and you try again. And if they're still not working for you, then maybe you have to even be a little bolder and a little more curious and try some of the enhancements that we've talked about. And number three, the results of related research efforts are meaningful only if reduced to particular or practical application to something of value within the context of the contemporary culture or era. So you can do all the research, you can do all the practice that you want, but again, it's very important that there are some practical applications with that. And that's what I think the Gateway Experience provides. Again, you could just go through wave 1 and wave 2 and stop there. Self-help, very basic, your basic level, entry-level self-help. Have the experiences in wave 1 and wave 2, and then go on with your life. That is a practical application. I guarantee you, you will feel better. You will be happier, healthier, healing the mind, body, and spirit just through wave 1 and wave 2, and then you can go on with your life. You don't even have to keep the exploration going. Where we're moving into now, things are different. Wave 1 and wave 2 are required training to get us to wave 3. Okay? There's your practical application. Now, there's other applications that we're going to use as we move forward, and we have a long ways to go. that really fall into different scopes than just self-help. It, again, is more exploration, it's more creating tools and more becoming more powerful. He goes on to say, this led us to the base that consciousness is a form of energy at work. Consciousness is energy at work. The first step must therefore be to perceive the energy itself. No small trick when you are using yourself to measure yourself, as it were. You have to perceive the energy, right? And then you have to be able to understand how to use it. That is why we do those simple steps in the early phases, when we create our energy toolbar, things like that. When we visualize ourselves creating our resonant energy balloon, that is us learning how to control the energy that is within us. Again, just through our imagination, through visualization techniques, we are learning how to control that energy. Once it is perceived in its raw form, one can possibly begin to understand how it is naturally used. Such perception will permit a broader and more deliberate control of such energy fields. From control, it is a very logical step to apply it to new and expanded forms. So again, once we learn to control this energy, then we can use and expand it out to new tools. This is all very circumlocutory way to say that if you can find out that the stuff that makes you think and be, you can use it in ways that you are not using it now. That's it. Nothing that we're going to learn here is something new. We're not adding anything to who we truly are. The physical, the non-physical parts of us. We're not adding things to it. What we're doing is, for the very first time in our lives, for most of us, we are exercising these aspects of ourselves. This energy, this, emotional and mental capabilities, they're often very stagnant for us because we live in that left brain world, that logical world. We dismiss those things. We don't need them because it's more important for us to survive. And we survive through logic. We survive by doing the same pattern every day because we know that when we wake up at this time and go to work for this long and then get this amount of money in our paycheck, it provides for our food and our shelter and our clothing. Great. All of that is important. Don't stop doing those things. But now that we understand that, now we're going to move beyond it to become more powerful. All right, folks, that was it for chapter 2. That was hemi-sync. So again, we went through chapter 1, Old Local Traffic, and chapter 2, titled hemi-sync, from the book Far Journeys. This is Dr. Monroe's second book in his trilogy of books. And we will dive deep into Wave 3 Freedom, Tape 1 Liftoff, after a word from our sponsor. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Welcome back, folks. Big thanks to our sponsor, Victory Work Apparel. I appreciate all of you. Even if you're just visiting the store, that means a lot. Take a look at what we have over there. Of course, all kinds of fresh hoodies. We got t-shirts, long sleeve tees, some really cool hats over there, stickers. Just check it out. I really appreciate it. That helps keep the Mind War running. So let's dive into Wave 3 Freedom, Tape 1 Liftoff. Folks, this is a great tape. So what we're going to be doing with this tape is simply experiencing, okay? No problem solving. We're not going to be addressing our emotions and dealing with fears. We're not creating any new tools. This is a great tape to listen to if you just need to relax. If you want to listen to a tape not because you want to address things and move forward. This is a great tape if you want to just experience and feel the gateway experience tapes. This is a great one. And here's how it gets started. It says, move now into your preparatory process, right? We've talked about that in season 3, the preparatory process. We know all about it. Our energy conversion box, and then follow up with your resonant tuning. Next, your resonant energy balloon, and then state your affirmation. I am more than my physical body. And then go to focus 10, and I will join you there. He says, now, with a protective and floating energy balloon formed all around you, you are safe inside, floating inside. So now he's talking about we've created our resonant energy balloon. Again, breathing in, holding the air, holding our breath for a moment, allowing that energy to refill our chakras as it spirals up through our body. We hold it in our minds, and then when we exhale, we visualize this white, healing, clean energy like a fountain pouring out from the top of our head. It's flowing down all around us, and then when we breathe again, we recycle that energy. We bring it back in through our feet. You've seen the pictures before. That's what we're doing. We are imagining and creating a resonant energy balloon. And we are safe inside of it. We are floating inside. It says, now you can control this energy balloon because it is yours. Again, this is our energy, no one else's. It's ours. We can use it. We have created it. It is your resonant energy balloon. Now you are going to learn how to let it float upwards. Now you are going to learn how to let it float upward. The protective energy balloon floating upward. Let it float now. Let it get lighter and lighter, more and more, slowly and easily floating upward. Now hold it right there at the point where you are right now. Perceive and observe as you float at this point in your resonant energy balloon. Safe and secure and calm. Observe now. So, again, no out-of-body experience. We are in focus 10 right now. We are solidly grounded in our body still. The body is asleep and our mind is wide awake, but we haven't moved into focus 12 where our awareness and perception begins to expand outside of our body. We haven't moved beyond focus 12 where we start to create our spirit body and have that move out of the physical body. No. We are simply in focus 10. Body is asleep, mind wide awake, and we understand where we are. We are still encapsulated in our physical body. Beautiful feeling, right? But we've created our resonant energy balloon, and now what's going to happen is in focus 10, still in our body, we're going to have the resonant energy balloon float upwards. So this time, the physical body is going to join us in the floating, where in future tapes, we leave the physical behind. It's very different. It's a different aspect. But this one, we're just going to let that resonant energy balloon float upward, and it feels amazing. Again, you're going to have butterflies in your stomach. It almost feels as if the bed below you starts to fall away, right? Not necessarily just floating upwards, but your room and everything begins to flow or fall from behind you as you start to float upwards in your resonant energy balloon. And then he says, now let it descend slowly, floating downward slowly back to where you were, where you began. Hold it and relax in your protected floating energy balloon. Now again, let it start to float upwards. So basically, throughout the rest of this tape, all he's simply doing is walking you through floating upwards in your resonant energy balloon and then slowly descending back to where you started. And then you do it again and back down. You do this several times. It feels amazing. I did this the other night. It was the strawberry moon of 2024. And I had taken a What I consider a normal dose of psilocybin for me, it's different for everyone, understand that, but I took what I consider to be a solid dose of psilocybin. The strain was called B+. It's a very intense strain. I haven't used it very much, so this tape worked brilliantly. I felt everything that Dr. Monroe was explaining. It was extremely intense. Floating upwards in the resonant energy balloon. Again, those feelings of butterflies in your stomach as if things were falling away from you as you were moving upwards. It truly was amazing. It felt wonderful, okay? And again, this isn't a tape where you are going to be sitting there thinking. You're not going in to solve problems or deal with your emotions or anything. It's beautiful in its simplicity. It's almost like, when you sit down to, scroll through your phone or watch TV and just veg out for a little bit. You're doing that because you need to relax. You don't want to necessarily deal with things and deal with emotions. And, I think I should bring this up here. There might be times when you go to listen to one of these tapes and you feel a little hesitant because you know that these are self-help. Again, it is parallel with therapy. You might have to deal with some difficult emotions, okay? So some of these tapes, it can be difficult at times to start to listen to them. You may not want to do it. You might say, man, I just don't want to deal with these thoughts and stuff right now. And please, even if you do think that way, listen to the tape anyways. That's often the best time to deal with those tapes and to deal with those emotions and the troubles and the things in your life is when you don't want to. That's when you're going to make the biggest breakthrough. We've talked about it before. It's not necessarily us, the volunteers. We are the explorers. We are the gateway explorers, right? We are part of that elite club who volunteer to do this. We know what we're getting into. We are looking for the adventure and the freedom that comes with these tapes. But we've heard about other people who have reluctantly went into them, non-believers, and they have these groundbreaking breakthroughs when they listen to these tapes, and it really just shocks them completely. That's what we're talking about. Sometimes when you're reluctant to listen to the tape because you don't want to deal with the emotions and the feelings that are going to come with it, sometimes it can be difficult, but it's in those times that maybe it's the most important too, okay? But tape 3-1, again, wave 3 freedom, tape 1 liftoff. We're just learning how to float in our resonant energy balloon. We're not dealing with issues. We're not dealing with emotions. We're not problem solving or creating new tools, right? It's very simple. It's just an exercise. And it feels amazing. This is a great one that if you want to just experience the feeling of the Gateway Experience tapes, this is a great one to go back to over and over and over again. And now towards the end here, it says, you're back to where you started. Now you will let your resonant energy balloon move inward. Let it be reabsorbed into yourself because it is yours. Let the energy that is your energy resonant balloon move inward now. Let it flow all back into you because it is you. Let it flow more and more, more and more. Now your resonant energy balloon has been absorbed back into you. You're going to relax, feel calm and comfortable, and focus 10, the 10 state. So now you're just going to sit and relax in the 10 state for a moment. And I'm telling you, whether it's this tape or so many others, you know the gravity of the experience that you're having. You almost don't recognize it till you're back in the 10 state. When you get back into the 10 state and you recognize, oh, I'm back in my body, I'm calm and grounded inside my body. My awareness is literally from my eyeballs and inside of my head. You realize how far you were during the tape, how expanded outward your awareness or your spirit body was. It's really when you come back that you recognize, holy cow, where was I? How did that work? That was so much more than I kind of had realized was happening. And it's a beautiful feeling. And that's why when we get back into Focus 10, it's important to kind of recognize that. When you get back into the physical, realize for a moment, okay, I'm back. This is Focus 10. I know where I'm at. I'm comfortable here. I've been here dozens of times. I know what this is. I'm in the sleep dojo. And again, it really grounds you, right? And so, again, you absorb your resonant energy balloon back into you. You are absorbing your energy. It's yours. You take it into you. Every single molecule of your body is now reabsorbed with this energy. It helps you build confidence. It helps you feel energized, even if it's not like a physical energy. It's that mental and emotional energy. And it's the fact that you were able to control something in your life, something that no one else has control over. It's why we work this. It's why we practice it. We are building the strength in these tools. This is exercise, right? That's why Dr. Monroe calls these exercises. We may not be physically lifting weights, even though I hope you are, but it is more of that mental exercise, right? And again, so he reads through the affirmation as he does at the end of all of our tapes, telling us that when we wake up, we're going to be revitalized and full of energy, and it's going to be beautiful, and we're going to be perfectly balanced, perfectly normal, perfectly equalized with all the conditions when we return to the physical waking state. And then, of course, he says, do it now. And again, the importance waking up out of the tapes, when he tells you to wake up, when he says number one, when he says think of the number one, you got to wake up. It's very important. It adds to the tapes. It adds to the just intense feelings. And it's so amazing. Every time he says to wake up, I feel my fingers moving and my legs moving, and it really is like, oh, I'm waking up now. I've been conscious this whole time, but now I'm waking up. It's a very strange but wonderful feeling, folks. And I just want to say, we made it to season 4. We are working through Far Journeys, Dr. Monroe's second book. I'm so proud of us that we made it this far. We're going to work through Wave 3, Freedom, and then Wave 4, Adventure here in Season 4 of Mind War. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.